Welcome to your weekend episode of the Managing Madrid podcast on the free RSS feed. It is Sunday, January 17th. This is your host, Kiyan Sobhani. This weekend's episode is going to be a little bit different. Truth be told, we didn't have something planned for this weekend, mostly because in our minds, we thought we were going to be having a Clásico tonight. And I guess that was naive of us because Real Madrid lost to Athletic Club in the semifinals of the Supercopa. So we didn't have a plan B because we kind of burned the boats. We burned the boats. We're like, we're going all in on the Supercopa semifinal and subsequent final. We're in Clásico Sunday, baby. So that's our plan for Sunday night. That didn't happen. And kind of just the way we scheduled after that with our lives and our personal lives. And believe it or not, we do have lives, and we just kind of did other things. We took the weekend off, watched some other football games. Because of that, we don't really have anything backup planned. Usually we'd throw in a historical segment here, and we just didn't today. So what you're about to listen to... Actually, before we get to that, I just wanted to do some quick housekeeping. My column went up on Friday, and I put a lot of work into it. So I did a lot of observations on some Real Madrid loanees, but also some Real Madrid tactical wrinkles, some thoughts on Hazard, Ramos, Asensio, and other things. That's on the site right now. It's pinned on the homepage, along with other great features, a video analysis from Arvind on Carlo Ball and the 2014-2015 season. Mehdi Hassan has an article about Zidane's counter-pressing. And as always, there's just a lot of great news and content on the website. So go check that all out. And then this week, we have a lot of content coming up on patreon.com/managingmadrid. So make sure you get access to that for bonus shows, bonus content, but also guaranteed responses to your questions and other rewards. So we're going full throttle on patreon.com/managingmadrid and putting a lot of content there as well. And also just some very quick thoughts, my elevator pitch or very quick, brief summary of my thoughts on heading into the Atalanta game in the Champions League, which I know is a ways away. We're still not really kind of talking about that yet, and usually we ramp up Champions League talk about like a week before a big Champions League game, so we'll do previews on the podcast and we'll do written content. But I've started watching them about a month ago just to kind of get my scouting reports together, and I just want to say I think that this is a really good matchup for Real Madrid. And if that comes back to bite me, I'm sorry. I promise I don't have any power in jinxing or not jinxing or whatever. But just the way Atalanta play, they're so vulnerable defensively. I will say this about them. And again, we're going to go into much more detail about Atalanta in February, maybe like around Valentine's Day. That's a nice sweet spot before the game. Ilicic is amazing. I really didn't know much about him before watching Atalanta play about a month ago. I've watched 4 games of Atalanta now. I'm actually recording this at halftime of the Atalanta-Genoa game, which is happening on Sunday. So I used halftime to just sneak in a quick recording. Ironically, he's actually not having a great game in this first half, but he is such an amazing line breaker, an amazing passer. If you look at like the chance creation metrics across Europe, it's basically him and Messi right now. But the eye test is unbelievable with him. He can break lines, he can dribble, he can pass, he can shoot, he can just create chances out of nothing. Basically, everything Atalanta does goes through him on the right in some capacity. And even when there's no openings, they'll just work their way around, and he'll move off the ball, and he'll come and link up, and he'll just basically make the offense tick. I've been really impressed with him. It'd be interesting to see how that matchup goes with Ferland Mendy. So that's just some really, really quick, basic thoughts on Atalanta without going into too much detail. Today's episode is actually a throwback, and it was recorded in 2018, and it was entitled Real Madrid's All-Time 11. And it was recorded between and I, again, in 2018, and we're publishing this for a couple reasons. One, it's because, again, we don't really have any other content. But the other reason is because this is one of our most downloaded episodes of all time. And I think it still holds up. I will kind of tell you, if you already listened to it in 2018, I mean, you may still want to listen to it for a quick refresher. But I know we've had a lot of new listeners since 2018 who may have not heard that yet. And I think especially if you're just looking for a crash course on Real Madrid's history, and where certain players rank all time, it's a good starting point for you. I will also say it's kind of interesting if in some people, like I'm really interested in stuff in kind of monitoring the development of people, just kind of seeing their evolution in their character. You'll see a kind of a more raw version of Om and I. We're not as polished with our vocal tonality. We're not as polished maybe in our confidence in kind of making the conversation flow. But I'd still say that it was a pretty good listen. And I still think it holds up, but I will also say that I think our opinion, my opinion certainly has changed since then, because I'm in the process of writing a huge Real Madrid book, as you know. So my history is a bit more polished than it was then now. So some of the things won't be necessarily what I think today in 2021. I think the legacies of several players have changed in my eyes. I also rank Cruz and Carvajal a bit higher in the all-time Real Madrid rankings since that podcast in 2018. And there are certain things you may or may not agree with, and that's fine. I think Om and I did a really good job of kind of bringing in over an hour's discussion of just where each player in Real Madrid's history, the great ones, may or may not rank. And our starting lineups are slightly different too. So either way, whether you agree or disagree with the lineups, our opinions have changed a little bit since then. But what you'll get out of this podcast is you'll get a crash course just about some of those players and some of those greats. So if you don't know much about Real Madrid history, this is a good starting point for you. So I hope you enjoy it. And for those of you still listening, like if you heard me say that this is a re-upload from 2018 and you decided to stop listening from that point on, that's fine. See you later. See you on the next podcast. If you're still listening to this, I guess here's your reward. I'm going to read a brief excerpt from my book. And the context of this excerpt is that it kind of proceeds a chapter where I did a deep dive on Di Stefano and Puskás and watched a bunch of their games in order to assess them properly. And this is right before I'm about to jump in Real Madrid's history from the beginning, 1902, like way before Di Stefano and Puskás even appear. I'm talking about like Real Madrid's first superstars, Pajinho, and kind of what Santiago Bernabeu had to do, but also him as a player, which is never talked about. So this is the context of that, and I won't provide any more further context intentionally so that it's just kind of a teaser. Chapter 3. Fast forward. Understanding the greatness of Di Stefano and Puskás is just one piece of the puzzle. Taking a deep dive into their lives and footballing ability allowed me to assess where they accurately rank in Real Madrid's history. You'll get the answer later in the book. But as transcendent as they both were, they were just one era. There are 7 decades of history that succeed them. Some eras were good, some were just not good, and even worse, completely dark. But the preceding 70-ish years have been flooded with legends, and we have to understand them all from every angle possible in order to accurately measure their legacy. Don't worry, I did all the hard work for you, with my months and months of research, conversations, sleepless nights, reading books with one hand while feeding Luca with the other, and probably some spilt blood along the way. Mine, not Luca's. So all you have to do is read my mumblings. Each era was special. Proceeding the Di Stefano and Puskás reign, we had the Yaya domestic dynasty, Santillana, Piri, Camacho, and co. dominating the league in the late 70s. Quinta del Buitre, Raúl emerging in the late 90s to get Real Madrid over the European Cup hump. Galacticos 1.0, the managerial conveyor belt which ensued it, and the Cristiano Ronaldo era which gave us so much. There are an infinite amount of details latent within each of those eras that have yet to be unearthed on a mainstream level. Think about it. The club, throughout its 116-year history, has had over 200 players and counting put the white jersey on, And that doesn't even begin to include the dudes who played once or twice for the club, like Miguel Parenca or Martin Odegaard. Real Madrid has won more trophies than any other club, and all of that history is laced with beautiful storylines, superstars, super-duper stars, important role players, underrated servants, and influential people behind the scenes. Maybe upon picking up this book, you were confused about how someone could possibly write a Real Madrid book that took up nearly 1,000 pages by an author who claims that even that many pages doesn't quite scratch the surface. But when you get to the end of this book, you'll understand a bit better just how fascinating this club is and how much important information is out there that needed to be squeezed in. You're about to take a crash course through each Real Madrid era, good and bad, in a blitz. Before we analyze the important players along the way in detail in subsequent chapters, there are some things to keep in mind. The club has had some bad years, but bad really depends on your outlook on life. Me, a glass half full type dude, I would say, how could I be so spoiled? The club has a museum of trophies that they've actually had to expand, like with real construction, just to fit in all the accumulating silverware. That's a surreal problem to have. We're allowed to be bad for a few years here and there. Half of football Twitter would say, fire the coach, sell this player, promote this player from Castilla who scored a goal this weekend against Cartagena. Still, even during dark years, the club boasted great players. Anyone from Juanito, Hierro, and Sanchez to Van Nistelrooy, Beckham, and Robben. It's just that the holistic feel to the team during a lot of those years was underwhelming, and the club just couldn't muster the trophies that were expected of them.